Hey guys, in this video we're going to work on the observer pattern, which allows us to subscribe and unsubscribe to certain events or certain functionality. So it gives us a really nice subscription model, and I think this is one of the more interesting patterns. It can be used to notify the DOM of certain elements to be updated. Actually, AngularJS relies heavily on this pattern through event management within the scope. What I want to do here is first give you an example using prototypes and then give you an example using ES6 classes. So we're going to create some buttons that will allow us to subscribe and unsubscribe to certain click events. So first thing we'll do is create a little UI here. We're just going to add a couple buttons. We're not going to use skeleton or anything. It's just going to be a couple buttons. So I don't want to add any framework or anything like that. So let's create a button. And we're going to give this button a class of sub-s, because what these are going to do is they're going to allow us to subscribe and unsubscribe to a click event to get seconds, to console log the current seconds using the date method. And then we'll also create buttons to subscribe and unsubscribe to getting milliseconds. Actually, we'll do the milliseconds first. So this will be sub-ms. We're going to say subscribe to milliseconds, and then I'm just going to go ahead and copy that line, and this one will have a class of sub-s, or I'm sorry, not sub-s, it'll be unsub-ms, and then we'll say unsubscribe from milliseconds. And then we're going to have one more button. I'm just going to put a couple line breaks. And we'll put one more button here. Whoops, that's not right. And then this is going to be to actually fire the event. So let's say fire, and we'll change the class to fire. Okay, so very simple UI, very ugly UI, but that's all right. And now what we want to do here is create a constructor function called event observer. All right, so this constructor function will have one property called observers, which represents the functions that will be passed into it. It'll be an array, and underneath that we're going to create a prototype. So let's say event observer dot prototype. We'll set that to an object, and then we'll put in subscribe. So we're doing this instead of doing like dots, prototype dot subscribe. We're just putting it all into an object like this, and each one will be a function, and it's going to actually take in a function. So I'm going to put in here fn. Okay, so we want to be able to subscribe to this function, and then we want to push it on to our observers. So this dot observers dot push, I can spell, and we want to pass in that function, and then I just want to do a console dot log just to notify the user that they're actually subscribed to that that handler. Okay, so let's say you are now subscribed to. Now we can't just put fn because that'll print out the entire function. We want just the name, so we're going to use .name. I don't know if we've used that yet, function .name. So that's the subscribe. Let's put a comma here, and let's do the unsubscribe. Okay, so that'll be a function, and that'll take in a function. So the unsubscribe, we're going to say this dot observers, and we want to set this equal to this dot observers dot filter. All right, so we're basically mutating this. We're going to say filter, we'll pass in a callback function, and we just want to in here do an if statement. So we're going to say if, let's see, actually this callback is going to take in, we'll say item, and we'll say if item, representing the function being passed in, if the item is not equal to the function that's being passed in here, then we want to return the item. Alright, and just in case this is not clear, I just want to paste in this comment here that may help you out. So this is filtering out from the list whatever matches the callback function. If there's no match, the callback gets to stay in the list, and the filter returns a new list and reassigns the list of observers. Okay, so if you're unsubscribing from a certain function, that one will be removed, but it'll generate a new list that has the rest of the functions that are subscribed to. And that may be hard to understand, but it'll be clearer when you actually see it work. So after this, let's go ahead and just do a console.log. Just like we did above, we're just going to say you are now unsubscribed from the function dot name. All right, so that's that. Now the last method we're going to have in here is the actual fire. So we're going to say fire function. Okay, and fire isn't going to take in any parameters. All we want to do here is loop through the observers. So observers dot for each. Oops, don't want to do that. Observers dot for each. Pass in function, and let's call this item. And then we just want to call whatever the function is, and we can do that with the call method. And that's it. Okay, so that's our event observer. We can now use it. So let's go down below it and let's instantiate it. We'll create a variable called click, and we'll set it to our new event observer, our new shiny event observer. And we're going to create our event listeners. So remember, we have a couple buttons here. We have the sub ms and unsub ms, and then the fire button. So let's say document dot, let's do query selector actually, and we have our sub dash ms. We're going to add event listener to that. Go ahead and pass in a function. And inside here, what we want to do, actually we need to pass in the type of event, which is a click. Alright, so when we click, it's going to run this function, and we want to take that click object right here, and we want to call this subscribe method. So we're going to say click.subscribe, and that takes in a function to subscribe to, this right here, this fn. So we don't have that created yet, so let's go ahead and create that down here. So that'll be a click handler. So let's say const, we're going to call it get cur for current milliseconds, and let's set that equal to a function. It's going to be very simple. All we're going to do is console.log, and we'll say current milliseconds. This is going to be some JavaScript, so we got to wrap it in this syntax, and we're going to say new date, and then we're going to say .2 milliseconds. Make sure you put your parentheses on the end of that as well. Alright, so new date 2 milliseconds. That's the function we want to subscribe to. So let's pass in here get cur milliseconds. So that'll subscribe. Now we also want the unsubscribe listener. So remember, we have a button with unsub ms, and then that's going to call click.unsubscribe, and we're going to pass in that same function. Okay, and then the last one we want here is for the fire button, and that's going to call click.fire, which doesn't take any parameters, and that's going to actually fire off. That's going to call the function. Okay, that's what this call is going to do. It's going to actually call this. So let's go ahead and save. Hopefully this works. Let's click fire. Nothing happens. That's good because we haven't subscribed to the get car milliseconds. Let's go ahead and subscribe to it. Let's see, I messed something up here. Current milliseconds, new date dot 2 milliseconds. Can I not put that in? Oh wait, no, I messed it up here. Ah. Dot name needs to go in here. Alright, let's try that again. So we're not subscribed. Let's go ahead and click subscribe. And now you'll see you are now subscribed to get car milliseconds. That's what this FN name is giving us. So now if I click fire, we get another error. Intermediate value 2 milliseconds is not a function. Let's see, 43. I knew something was wrong here. It's get milliseconds. Alright, so again, we'll subscribe, click fire, and now it gets the current milliseconds. If I keep clicking, you'll see I'll keep getting them. Alright, now if I unsubscribe, you'll see now I'm unsubscribed, and if I click fire, nothing happens. If I click subscribe again, and I click fire, it's back. So that's what the observer pattern allows us to do, and although this is a very simple, kind of useless example, you can think up in your head the kinds of things that you can do with it. Now, we can do this with multiple functions, obviously, so what I'm going to do is create a couple more buttons. I'm going to copy these 3 lines, and let's change this to sub S and unsub S, and we'll say subscribe to seconds, and then unsubscribe from seconds. Alright, and then what I'll do is go back here and create a new click handler called get car seconds, and then we're going to say current seconds, and then change this to, instead of get milliseconds, get seconds. Okay, and then we're going to create 2 more event listeners for those 2 new buttons. And this time we're going to do sub S, and that's going to subscribe to get car seconds. And then unsub S will unsubscribe from get car seconds. So now if we save this over here, if I click fire, nothing happens. Subscribe to milliseconds, I click fire, we get milliseconds. Subscribe to seconds and click fire, we get both the milliseconds and the seconds. Alright, you can see I'm getting both because I'm subscribed to both. If I unsubscribe from milliseconds and click fire, now I'm only getting seconds. If I unsubscribe from seconds, now I get nothing. I'm not subscribed to anything. Alright, so pretty powerful. Now, real quick, I just want to create another file here, and we'll call this app es6.js. Doesn't really matter what you call it. Then we're just going to copy everything. And just a refresher how to turn ES5 base object-oriented programming into ES6 classes. We can turn this into a class, event observer, and we would need to have a constructor. And we're going to set this property inside the constructor. And then we want these functions to be methods of the class. So we'll have subscribe, which will have this syntax. It'll take in the function, and then we'll just take the body of the function here, put that in there. Alright, then we'll have unsubscribe. Whoop. And then we'll take this here, throw that in. And then we'll have our fire, which is this right here. And then we can get rid of this, all the prototype stuff. Okay, and it should work the exact same way. We still instantiate it with the new keyword, and we should be able to do everything else. So let's save this, and then let's go to index.html and change this to app es6.js. Let's go ahead and click fire. Nothing happens. Milliseconds, fire works. Subscribe to seconds. Okay, we're getting both. Unsubscribe from milliseconds, we're just getting seconds. Unsubscribe from seconds, and we're getting nothing. So that works the same way. It's just using classes instead. So I mean, it's up to you what you want to use. But again, this is syntactic sugar. It's just a convenient syntax for this here. All right, guys. So that's it for the observer pattern. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.